Good morning, friends. Welcome back to our morning coffee time. And everyone see and hear me okay? I believe we have reached Sunday, June the 21st. Days and nights are relentlessly passing. How's everyone this morning? Mm-hmm. Okay, 2 thumbs up. No news this morning. I forgot yesterday to mention that Ajahn Amaro was giving a Dhamma talk online. Somehow I'm a day late. One of my sources that I check is the Portland Friends of the Dhamma e-group. And I get a summary from them in my email, but it's a summary from yesterday. So sometimes I miss what's going on there. So happy Father's Day. This is also a lot going on the last couple of days. Yesterday we had the summer solstice and the Uposatha, and today is Father's Day. It's interesting feature of Thai Buddhist culture. Our teachers, the most venerated of them, especially in the Lao language, are referred to as Kruba. So a Kruba Ajahn is an honorific and somewhat endearing way to refer to our teachers, especially those that are recognized for their accomplishment and practice. So there is something of an elevated honorific sense to calling someone a Kruba Ajahn. And one way it's further embellished or rounded out is to refer them as Po Me Kruba Ajahn. So Po is father, Me is mother. So father, mother, teacher. And it's very nice. I like how it rounds out the whole relationship that one ideally has with a good teacher. They're not just a teacher, like in that secular sense that we have teachers, but the importance that they might have in your life, if you're a close disciple especially, is likened to the relationship that one has with their mother and father. It's this person who brings you into and gives you life in this Dhamma and discipline, who gives you teachings and advice. And as a monastic, like studying underneath them, literally they're creating the space and helping ensure that you have the requisites to support you in your spiritual life. So, and my fathers have passed on. So my fathers now are Pome Krubachan, my venerable teachers. So okay, well, I'm kind of See a little discussion of Ajahn Sona's talk yesterday, which I didn't catch. Well, today I wanted to go over a sutta, one of my favorites. It kind of came up in connection with something we were talking about recently. Some of this reflection on just attending to sense contact and the effort to pare that back to its essence, the fundamentals of that, and what one can learn from the mind, but also in how one really can kind of discover and learn how it is that one creates dukkha. So a very, I think, accessible thing is upon hearing a unpleasant sound or unwished for word or something, based on the hearing of that, we create saṅkhāras. We create a reaction. And when confected with our tendency towards greed, hatred, and delusion, then it supports the process of selfing and the process of suffering. So, and when we're talking about that, I just very briefly referenced this Sutta to Bāhiya, which is quite a memorable sutta where the Buddha gives this very brief instruction to a wanderer by the name of Bāhiya, a wearer of bark robes, so some sort of ascetic of some type. And I thought I would share that sutta with people that might not be familiar with it. It's something worthy of kind of contemplation, and I like how simple and direct it is, and it's an interesting way to, at the very least, kind of explore contemplation or a meditation on sense contact, and in particular, how it is that suffering comes to be. So, Zuri, I see you have a question. Is anger a saṅkhāra? Yes, anger is a saṅkhāra. So, emotions aren't classified as Vedana or feeling. Emotions are classified as saṅkhāras. So there is some element of volition, like born of contact, and volition and attention. Mental formations come to be, and emotions fit within that, including the emotion of anger. So anyways, this is a slightly longer sutta. Not exactly sure how much of it to read, but I think it makes it memorable to read a little bit more of it, so that you can come back to this, like, because the character of Bāhiya is interesting. It's a very unique story in the Sutta Pitaka, and one of these stories of a very quick enlightenment. So let's see if I can do this. And so we've had problems with this recently, but you should be able to hear me. If someone wants to give me some feedback before I start reading. So this is in a collection called the Udana. Okay, good. Thanks, Adil and Stan. This is in a collection called the Udana, and it's the Bāhiya Sutta. So, interesting feature of the Udana is oftentimes there's some story or exchange that happens, and then usually it's it ends or is summed up with a verse, which is another way that one can encapsulate and sort of remember these, is to study and memorize the verses. So, okay, so for the benefit of those who want to close their eyes and meditate, or for those who are not sighted and want to listen to a sutta, I'll read this. The Discourse about Bāhiya. Thus have I heard at one time the Gracious One was dwelling near Savatthi in the Jeta's Grove at Anathapindika's monastery. Then at that time, Bāhiya of the bark robe was living near Suparaka on the bank of the ocean, being venerated, respected, revered, honored, esteemed, in receipt of robes, alms food, dwellings, and medicinal requisites to help when sick. So he's not a Buddhist monk. Again, he's a wanderer, either of another sect or maybe just an independent wandering spiritual practitioner, but it seems that people respect him for his practice and he has the supports. When Bāhiya the bark robe had gone into hiding, into seclusion, this reflection arose in his mind. Among those in the world who are worthy ones, or who have entered the path to worthiness, I am one of them. Then a Devata, who was a former blood relative of Bāhiya of the bark robe, so a Devata is an angelic being, being compassionate and desiring for his welfare, knowing with his mind the reflection in the mind of Bāhiya of the bark robe, went to Bāhiya of the bark robe. And after going, he said this to Bāhiya of the bark robe. You are certainly not a worthy one, Bāhiya. Notice that's capitalized. So worthy one here is like a stand-in for an enlightened one or an arahant. Nor have you entered upon the path of worthiness. This practice of yours is not one whereby you could be a worthy one, or one who has entered the path to worthiness. So he's made the very common mistake of overestimating where he has arrived in his spiritual practice, and this Devata has kind of come and said, you're not there, and you're not on the right way. So in this shakens Bāhiya, and skipping forward a little bit, Bāhiya sort of being kind of shaken out of his overestimation of his spiritual practice, seeks the Buddha, because the Deva lets him know that a Buddha has arisen in the world and that he should seek out the Buddha. So let's see. So we'll pick this up where the Bāhiya has gone on some sort of search to find the Buddha, and he's found out that the Buddha is going for alms, and he tracks him down. So let's see where to pick this up. Then Bāhiya of the bark room, having hurriedly left the Jeta's grove and having entered Savatthi, saw the Gracious One walking for alms in Savatthi, confident, inspiring confidence, with sense faculties at peace, mind at peace, having attained supreme control and calm, controlled, guarded, with restrained faculties, a true Naga. After seeing him, he went to the Gracious One, and after going and prostrating himself with his head at the Gracious One's feet, he said this to the Gracious One, let the Gracious One preach the Dhamma to me. Reverend Sir, let the Fortunate One preach the Dhamma. That will be for my benefit and happiness for a long time. After that was said, the Gracious One said this to Bāhiya of the bark robe. It is the wrong time for you, Bāhiya. We have entered among the houses for alms. For a second time, Bāhiya of the bark robe said this to the Gracious One. But it is hard to know, Reverend Sir, the dangers to the Gracious One's life or the dangers to my life. Let the Gracious One preach the Dhamma to me. Reverend Sir, let the Fortunate One preach the Dhamma. That will be for my benefit and happiness for a long time. So he's, I guess, cognizant of the fragility of life and certainty of death, and he is anxious to get a teaching, having been shaken out of his overestimation that not only is he not enlightened, he's not on the path to enlightenment, and he's found the Buddha who's going alms round, and he's imploring him to give him the teaching like now. And the Buddha starts saying, it's not the right time. We're walking for alms now. And Bāhiya pleads with him once, twice, 3 times to give the teaching. And then this is where the Buddha then shares the teaching with him. In that case, Bāhiya, you should train yourself thus. In what is seen, there must only be what is seen. In what is heard, there must only be what is heard. In what is sensed, there must be only what is sensed. In what is cognized, there must be only what is cognized. This is the way, Bāhiya, you should train yourself. And since for you, Bāhiya, in what is seen, there will only be the seen. In what is heard, there will only be what is heard. In what is sensed, there will only be what is sensed. In what is cognized, there will only be what is cognized. Therefore, Bāhiya, you will not be with that. And since, Bāhiya, you will not be with that, therefore, Bāhiya, you will not be in that. And since, Bāhiya, you will not be in that, therefore, Bāhiya, you will not be here or hereafter or in between the two. Just this is the end of suffering. So then through the Gracious One's brief teaching of this Dhamma, Bāhiya of the bark robe's mind was immediately freed from the pollutants without attachment. Then the Gracious One, having advised Bāhiya of the bark robe with this brief advice went away. Not long after the Gracious One had gone, a cow with a young calf, having attacked Bāhiya of the bark robe, deprived him of life. So the Buddha gives this very, very brief teaching. I think very much kind of pointed to present moment experience and how it is in our relationship to that experience. We create the foothold or the ground for suffering to be and to arise. And in particular, it's this reflection on the self. So the Buddha's advice in brief here is stunning in its simplicity. In what is seen, let there only be the seen. In what is heard, let there only be the heard. In what is sensed, the cognized, the cognized. So he doesn't even go through the 6 senses here. He just goes through sight, sound, sensed, and cognition, or thought. You just re-examine your relationship to sense experience directly in the present moment, and see that it is empty of self. See that the self is a saṅkhāra, it is a construct. See that liking and disliking, the creation of good and bad, of for me, all the various forms of selfing, all the ways that we build or react upon this experience of consciousness, that's the ground where suffering arises and where suffering ceases. You will not be with that. You will not be, and when you're not with that, you will not be in that. You will not be here or hereafter or in between the two. I like that last phrase for contemplation of life. You're not here, you're not in the hereafter, and you're not in between the two. So, anyways, then after he gets this brief teaching, the Buddha goes off, or gives this teaching, the Buddha goes off and finishes his alms round, and Bāhiya, who maybe had sensed his life was as fragile as life really is, and as unpredictable as it really is, he gets killed. He's in India. There's cows wandering in the street, and apparently a mother cow attacks him, and he dies. So the Buddha sort of finds out that he dies and asks the monks to gather up his body and cremate him. And then, as often happens in the suttas, the monks are curious. What about this Bāhiya? Like, what was his state? Will he be reborn? And let's. And I'll pick it up here where the Buddha kind of gives his declaration. Well, here's the monks asking. Well, he sat to one side. Those monks said this to the gracious one. Burnt, Reverend Sir, is Bāhiya of the bark robe's body, and the memorial mound for him has been made. What is his destination? What is his further state? So here the monks kind of want to know, like, what's going on with this Bāhiya guy? Is he enlightened? Where will he be reborn? And the Buddha declares this. A wise man, monks, was Bāhiya of the bark robe, who practiced Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma, and did not trouble me on account of the Dhamma. I mean, barely know him for a few minutes. Completely emancipated, monks, is Bāhiya of the bark robe. Then the gracious one, having understood the significance of it, on this occasion uttered this exalted utterance. In the place where the water, earth, fire, and wind find no footing, there the stars do not shine, nor does the sun give light. There the moon does not glow. There darkness is not found. And when the sage, the Brahmana, has experienced Nibbana through his own sagacity, then from both form and formless, happiness and suffering, he is free. So that's how the sutta ends. So, good morning, Zuri. I'm not sure ancient Indian cows were either more or less aggressive than they are today, but they can be unpredictable. So I think the first translation of this I read gave me the impression that it was a bull. This particular translation is from Venerable Ānandajoti, and he's just rendered it as a cow and a calf. But the earlier rendition that I had indicated it was a bull, I think. And I've actually seen incidents like this on alms round. When I was a young monk in Thailand, there was a small village, maybe a mile or two away from Wat Pananachat, where I ordained. And one day I was on alms with a small group of monks there, and you walk for little ways down this kind of dirt path through the rice paddies to the edge of the village. And just as we entered the village, somebody's water buffalo had gone into a fit of rage and was flailing about, smashing through people's fences, and the owner and a few of the men were screaming and shouting and trying to contain him and calm him down, and a crowd was gathering, and it was a fearful sight to see a large animal like that just on a rampage, raging around. And I can't remember if I had read this sutta to Bāhiya before or afterwards, but I certainly have a vivid sense from that experience how one's life could end in that way. So, this sutta, Ajahn Amaro was very fond of this sutta, and I wish there was some place I could point to, but it's something that would pop up in his reflections and Dhamma talks from time to time when I was living with him at Abhayagiri. So I can't provide you a link, but if you're interested in some really interesting commentary on this, see if you can track down Ajahn Amaro's reflections on it. He goes a little bit more into kind of contemplating this kind of idea of how through properly sort of attending to sense contact with lucidity and clarity, one sees this kind of experience, or the opportunity for the experience, for there to be kind of no footing for self to take hold, and thus, for the experience of dukkha. Okay, this is what I need friends for. Thank you, Gabriel. Ajahn Amaro's book Breakthrough has a very interesting discussion of this very sutta. Okay. Well, people could probably find that on Amaravati or forsangha.org. So maybe I myself should go refresh my mind about it. Okay, well, if there's no other comments or questions, I'll kind of leave you with that today for your contemplation. And if you have a little time, you might seek out the breakthrough, but I would say more importantly, contemplate how it is that a foundation or a footing for the arising of suffering comes to be. In particular, what role the self plays in that. And recognize, even in the most simple way, that, when we can merely be with the seen and the heard, the sensed and the cognized, connect with it, if I might, and there's a sense of connection with that. There's no need for this to exercise this selfing that leads to the experience of suffering. So, one further reference, there's a mention of this sutta as well in the island. Yeah, and in the island there's a few other sutta that's related to this that Ajahn Amaro discusses. So, and for those not familiar, the island by Ajahn Amaro and Ajahn Pasanno is a really interesting contemplation on the concept of nibbana. So, all right, friends, I'll leave it at this for today. Happy Father's Day to all of our fathers, and be well. I'll see you tomorrow morning.